would like to start off by asking the Honorable Joseph Antipool to lead us off with a word of prayer.
Good afternoon, all. Let us pray. Almighty God, we give you thanks for the gift of the day that we have before us and an opportunity to once again serve and speak with our people. We ask continued blessings over our leadership as well as the people of Anguilla. We ask for continued protection and guidance, particularly as we continue to navigate this hurricane season. We ask that the information that is shared here today be shared with clarity, wisdom, and respect, and to the benefit of the people of Anguilla. Please guide these proceedings and govern them with wisdom as we continue to serve our people in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you very much. So I will start off in terms of giving an update as it relates to my ministries. In relation to the Ministry of Finance, it is now some 6 weeks, a month and a half, since our GST relief was implemented on the 1st of August 2025. The GST revenue for July, which would have been reflected in the August filings, the anticipated amount was 8.5 million, and what actually came in was 8.7 million. For September, it is normally expected to be in the region of 7.5 million. And so this month, September, filings will represent August filings, and that would be the first set of filings under the goods tax. And of course, we expect with the revised tax structure that there would have been less revenue coming into the government as a result of the removal of the 13% compounding structure that existed and being replaced with the 9% goods tax at the port. I want to remind persons as well that GST was removed from food supplies, all food goods, in December of 2024. So in terms of price reduction, you would ideally see those reductions on the non-food goods. So the non-perishable goods and items that are not food items is where you would see that major reduction. And also in other areas such as the construction sector and the other items in the grocery stores, as I mentioned, that would not have been covered previously. For the domain name registration, the August revenue was US $8 million, and that has been generally consistent for about 2 months. It was 9 million, and normally the monthly revenue is between $7 and $9 million per month. In terms of Social Security, I have spoken with the Social Security chair and some members of the board with respect to looking at an unemployment benefits program. As many of you may recall, I sat as Minister of Labor between 2015 and 2020, and during that time we would have undergone some external shocks, in particular Hurricane Irma and COVID-19, and on those two occasions, especially our hotel sector would have been crippled, and as a result of that, the unemployment rate at that time on both occasions was high, and Social Security had to step in the gap to be able to provide something, some sort of relief for the people of Anguilla. We do believe it's time to create a system where our persons who have to undergo such a situation will be able to tap into an unemployment system, and so we are keen to look at that program and see how it can be implemented. And along with that would be an aspect of a private sector pension plan. And so we know that there is no pension plan for the private sector as it exists. In fact, the actuary for the Social Security Board, in making his report some months ago, shortly after we took office, would have been charged with looking at both aspects and seeing how we could provide these programs for people of Anguilla. And so the Social Security Board will be looking at that and will come forward with their ideas and suggestions at some point in time. In terms of constitutional reform, the committee is to be established by the end of this week. As we know, Anguilla has the oldest constitution of all of the overseas territories, and so it is time that we move forward with wholesale constitutional reform for the people of Anguilla. And once that committee has been established, they will be reviewing all of the work that has been done in the past. They will be making recommendations, and those recommendations will ultimately come to the House of Assembly, come to the people of Anguilla, and we'll move forward from there. And so I think those are my updates for now. We do have some legislative amendments to make in terms of immigration and labor, and those reforms will be forthcoming once I'm able to review the documents, have discussions with the relevant departments in terms of updating and where we want to go in terms of immigration and labor reform. Those are my updates for now, and I will pass it over to Honorable Shelia Rogers-Webster to provide her update.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to everyone here who's here representing the media, those listening via Radioland, Facebook Live. It's a pleasure to be here. I am happy to report that all public schools have now officially reopened. We expect that within the next couple of weeks, the students of the Vivian Vanterpool Primary School will move over to their main building. That is the new building, so we are very excited for them to be welcome there. We're just waiting on some final touches in relation to the electricity to be completed and finalized, and they will move into their building officially. At Campus B, we are still awaiting the completion of the upstairs toilets. However, our school is operational. The Tibet building is underway and it's progressing well. We hope to have that portion of the facility, the Tibet and agricultural side, open by September 2026. We are also hoping to secure additional funding for the sports facilities at Campus Q through this upcoming budgetary process. Once those funds are secured, we will move very quickly through the procurement process to be able to get construction underway and completed as soon as possible for that facility. That is a priority area for us as well. Through the budgetary process which we are currently undergoing, we're looking to invest greater in our early childhood education. We're hoping to be able to further increase some of the stipends of the early childhood educators, but also we will be offering free access to our early childhood educators who are interested in the UE early childhood education program. So any early childhood educators who are currently working in the system and you're desirous of signing up for that program, please keep in mind that government will now be offering free training via our scholarship program for UE. And you have to apply through public administration. Through the budgetary process, education is also looking to fill a number of key roles. Occupational therapist is a critical role. We have a number of teaching positions that we are also lobbying for. Also, we're lobbying for a curriculum officer social studies. We currently do not have one. We're also lobbying for curriculum officers to be specific to the secondary level. Right now, we don't have any curriculum officers at the secondary level, and we're looking to do a comprehensive review of all our curriculums over the next year, and so it's going to be critically important for us to have curriculum officers in place to be able to undertake that critical work. I'm happy to report that the school feeding program at Valley Primary School has officially started today. I was able to go on site and view the students having their meals, as well as to talk with teachers, principal, and some parents who were still there. So that was a priority for us to ensure that Valley Primary School got online come September. So after all the assessments, we were able to start the program today. So I just want to thank everyone who was involved in making sure the kitchen facilities were prepared, that will continue to be. And that program is also continued to be sponsored by the Scholes Foundation, as it sponsors the other school meals as well. We're hoping to have the appointment of the PAS in my ministry effective November 1st. As I indicated before, my hope is that that individual will be focused heavily on education and managing a number of major education projects that we hope to have being rolled out over the next couple of years. I move on to Department of Youth and Culture. The Anguilla Summer Festival 51, in our opinion, was a success. We have already had our post-mortem meeting, and there are a number of upcoming plans that are being made. We intend in a couple of weeks to have a general meeting with all stakeholders in relation to Summer Festival so that persons can come in, voice their opinions, share any concerns that they may have, but also to openly share ideas. That will be in a town hall setting, and that will be organized by the Summer Festival Committee itself. We have paid all our vendors and participants except two. We expect that by the end of the month, those final two vendors will be completed in payments. I want to put on record my gratitude to the entire Summer Festival team for all of their hard work and dedication throughout this process, as well as a number of our sponsors who were very instrumental in ensuring that we had a good Summer Festival. I'm also happy to report that it is our hope to progress the festival's legislation in October, and once that legislation is passed, we'll go through the process of beginning to recruit some of the operations officers of the festival's commission. This budgetary process is going to be very important for the Ministry of Social Development going forward. A number of my department heads have submitted quite a bit of new spending requests in a number of different areas, both in PE, so personal emoluments, but as well as programming related work. We currently have the Community Services Planning Unit that's doing quite a bit of work in community-based upskilling. They're offering to various communities training in plumbing, electrical, and cosmetology. So if anybody out there is interested in these areas, please, there are quite a bit of opportunities. So I would encourage persons to sign up. We intend to continue to support those programs and to even give more support and funding to a number of these community-based programs. We're hoping to work a bit closer with our community centers as well to offer much more programming and community-based programs out of those community centers. So we've been doing quite a bit of work on that. Once we are past the budgetary process, I'd be able to speak more definitively on which programs we'll be able to roll out, both capital-based projects as well as general programming and positions that have been approved. We are moving forward with the Zenada Haven. We have completed the plans, and now we're going to be moving in short order through the procurement process. That project is a priority for us, and we hope to have it completed in 2026. The ankle monitoring is expected to begin in October of this year. We signed the contracts about 3 months ago, and we've been waiting for the equipment to come on island. So that's it for the updates in my area.
Good afternoon, all. It's a pleasure being back after quite some time. I believe that this would be the first press conference that I've had since taking a step back since the House of Assembly announcement, where I've recently become a new parent. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you to everyone who has called out, reached out with words of appreciation, words of congratulations, or words of encouragement, or has been checking up on me in this new phase of my journey in life. I particularly want to say thank you to the Premier and my entire team at Cabinet for the support that they would have also given me at this time. Particularly special thank you to Mr. Cardell Richardson, who within the Ministry of Infrastructure in particular would have stepped up to pull a lot of the slack for me. Now, initially I would have envisaged that I would have been on paternity leave, but as the Premier would call it, and as would probably more rightfully so be the term, I was working from home. because while I was taking some time to assist with the baby, be present, there was accommodations made so that I could attend cabinet meetings virtually, attend meetings virtually where possible, either come into office when needed to or attend executive council. But I just want to say once again an immense big thank you to the team for understanding and providing me some time and flexibility to be able to engage at this special point in time. So as it relates to updates within the Ministry of Infrastructure, I'll start off as it relates to the airport terminal. So the most recent update that we would have given as it relates to the airport terminal building would have been about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, when we would have seen the signage going up and the completion of the Clayton J. Lloyd International Airport sign on the outside. Joining me for that walkthrough was Mr. Maurice Connor, Anguilla's second pilot and an aviation pioneer within the country. So it was truly an honor to be able to walk through the development with someone who has been critical in building Anguilla's aviation history. Now, as we would have heard during that update, the project was on budget and on time, and I should still say that it still is. But in the purposes of full transparency, there has been an update that I've gotten since then that I do want to share with the people of Anguilla. And that's because of some challenges that were experienced due to coordination. We're currently having some discussions to see if we can still keep the deadline for end of November, well, for mid-November. But worst case scenario, we're looking at a potential 3-week delay to the terminal building opening due to making sure that the operational readiness and testing is fully complete. Now, as I said, we can aggressively push to make sure that it is still open on time. That was envisaged, but I'm just putting this out there if we were to get to that point and decide that we are going to have a delay. Reason being, come the end of November, one of the things we have to factor in is we're entering into Thanksgiving and one of the busier periods on the island. So we want to make sure the operational readiness and testing is completely done and to a standard where we can ensure a certain level of visitor experience, rather than just trying to get it open in time for them, and then perhaps identifying any deficiencies that will have to be corrected as passengers through an increased period of time are transitioning through our airport. Either way, what we're looking at as a worst case scenario is opening of the airport terminal on December 8th, 2025, as opposed to November 17th. Either way, this does not impact the final completion of the overall project, which still remains on track for May 3rd, 2026. And when asked about other potential unforeseen delays, I've been assured that aside from any potential delays that we may encounter here, there is no room for other delays that, at least at this point in time, can be foreseen. In terms of construction milestones as it relates to the terminal building as of now is 86% complete, where interior works are continuing to progress rapidly. The stormwater systems on the land side outlet is 100% complete, and on the air side is 99% complete, so almost done with the stormwater systems. Left there is just a little bit of the landscaping to be done. In terms of the wastewater treatment plant, this is now 60% complete. The apron is 77% complete, and the majority of the remainder of the apron will be contingent on the demolition of the old airport terminal and expanding the apron in front to the footprint where it currently exists. In terms of the interior finishes, work is rapidly progressing to complete those, and systems for access control, CCTV, fire detection, and public Wi-Fi are currently being laid and installed. So that's where we're at in terms of the airport terminal building. As it relates to the runway, work is continuously going on in terms of trying to aggressively pursue the lands necessary for the runway extension. As we know, we are not able to progress with any part of the runway extension until all of the lands have been acquired previously to starting. So it's a process that is taking time, and we do know in Anguilla sometimes these land matters do take some time, but I can reassure the people of Anguilla that we're making good and steady progress, and we're very hopeful that we'll have this runway extension started very soon without impacting the overall delivery of the runway significantly. While on the topic of the airport, before moving on, I do note that in the public domain, there has been a lot of conversation as it relates to Bermuda Air and a minimum revenue guarantee being signed by the Government of Anguilla. with reference being made to a radio interview where the Honorable Minister Cardigan Connor, as Minister of Tourism, would have made some representations, and I would have seen some members of the, well, at least a member of the opposition, take this narrative and go and release a public statement. I want to make it abundantly clear that the Government of Anguilla has not entered into any minimum revenue guarantee with Bermuda Air or any other airline since this administration has taken office. And for further clarification and clarity, minimum revenue guarantees ensure that airlines are profitable at least to a certain extent, regardless of performance, regardless of any other metric. So the way that in which that they are currently structured, are usually structured, is that there are a minimum number of seats that if they're not sold, government will subsidize and pay for those empty seats up to that minimum amount. Or another way that minimum revenue guarantees tend to be issued is by giving a commission for every seat that's actually sold. These are options, both of which that were presented to the Government of Anguilla as it pertains to this contract, both of which the Government of Anguilla made a hard red line and stated that we're not going to be offering any minimum revenue guarantees. So I hope that that makes that abundantly clear. To further clarify the statements that were made, on at least one of the routes coming out of our target markets on the US East Coast, there are a number of unsellable seats due to the load factor. When we say unsellable, seats on the airline that due to the passenger capacity, due to the weight of fuel, due to the weight of baggage, the airline will not be able to sell. Now, the airline came back to us later in negotiations saying that because we have these unsellable seats, we would like to explore ways and means of mitigating and sharing that risk. So I've heard representations that there are more than 20 seats. There are 20 seats. So the airline is capable of carrying 96 passengers. If we say that 20 seats are unsellable, there are 76 remaining seats. Now, a number of conversations were had and entered into and engaged with, including with the private sector, to help with sharing and mitigating this cost. Now, the cost of the entire 20 seats, if we had to quantify it, represents $667,000 over the entire first term that the airline will be flying. However, while this is $667,000 represented entire 20 seats over the initial, let's say, 5-month period, the economic impact that it stands to bring to Anguilla on a monthly basis ranges between $4.3 and $6.5 million per month. So for example, the reason that hotels and private sector would have been engaged in these conversations to help and find ways and means of addressing and sharing the risk of those seats is that even if they contributed $200,000 or $300,000 to help make up those seats, they'll be making millions of dollars in return on the back end. In terms of the quantity of those seats and what the return on investment suggests that we stand to gain, it's a 70% return. And Government of Anguilla, I can say, I won't want to give specific numbers, but we're not even paying for half of those seats. So to say that Government of Anguilla has entered into a minimum revenue guarantee, it is not true. And in terms of saying that we're paying for them, we're not giving any cash in hand. What I can say we have entered into, that we have done with Bermuda Air, that is standard across all airlines, is enter into a marketing agreement where there is shared revenues going in for a marketing campaign, which benefits not only both the island, but as well as the airline and the destination as a whole. One of the things that we can see, where we can see the returns of this investment, since Bermuda Air has been offering these flights, we have seen persons who have been taking these up and booking them, extending their length of stay by 50%. So they're staying over half as long than they would have had they had to go through other routes, whether St. Martin, whether through catching multiple flights. So we're already seeing the economic benefits to this. So what we're giving on government's behalf is meeting them in a partnership, meeting the private sector in a partnership, and is in no way undercutting or undermining any agreements we have with any other airline. So I just wanted to make that abundantly and absolutely clear. As it relates to .ai and leveraging the domain, the Premier would have given an update on the domain performance, which is strong between $7 and $9 million per month. The months where we see it do bump up to 9 and then come back down to 8, it's not an indication that the domain the revenues are declining, but that's as a result of auctions performing very well in those months, so sending them above and beyond what we would anticipate to get. But we do project that between now and the rest of the year, we will continue to make about $7 to $8 million on average auction sparing, which may still bump us up a bit extra for the remainder of the year. Identity Digital was recently on island. They would have met with a number of stakeholders, which includes myself and persons within my ministry, where we had some very conducive discussions as to how we're going to continue growing the .ai revenue growth, as well as how we're going to enact certain parts of the contract, whether that's investing in our youth, whether it's social contributions, whether it's finding ways to leverage the domain beyond what's currently being done, so that there's an effective connection made between the .ai domain and Anguilla in general. And I can say that we've had some very fruitful conversations. In conversation with them, as well as some other parties, as for some AI conferences to be hosted in Anguilla next year. So we're hoping to see, if everything goes well and is successful, a few of those coming online. And for the persons who may not see the link between the AI conferences and managing or leveraging it against the .ai domain, it's beyond just hosting a conference to say you have an AI conference here in Anguilla. For the people who say, well, why not have one conference as opposed to multiple conferences? Each conference that we're looking at hosting here in Anguilla is targeting a different niche, a different audience, a different set of people who would be interested in the content tailored to that specific event. The idea is not only to get them here to Anguilla to have the conversations in the conferences, but also they will be spending times at our beaches, at our restaurants, at our hotels, engaging with our locals, participating with our economy. But beyond that exposure and letting people know about Anguilla who previously may not have known about it, we're also working with, for example, Minister Kyle Hodge in the Ministry of Economic Development to build out the special economic zone, because we want to find reasons that when these businesses come here, these entrepreneurs, the startups, whoever they are, from whatever niche market, we have an avenue to say, by the way, this is why you should invest in Anguilla. This is why you should set up a business in Anguilla. This is why you should move your operations to Anguilla. We would have seen in the advent of COVID, a number of businesses would have shifted to working from home, working remotely, particularly within the tech space. So why not attract a Google here to set up an office and say, you know what, as an incentive to your employees, you can always give them the option of spending a month, 3 months, 6 months, working from the Anguilla office remotely. So these are the things we're doing, so the AI conferences will prove as a conduit to doing so, with the larger goal of having physical presence established here, as well as Anguilla being known and renowned as that AI-centered focus within the Caribbean. I would like to further report on that a few weeks ago, I would have been invited by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank to judge a regional generative AI conference that was held in St. Kitts. The conference had participants from all over the Caribbean region, and I was honored to have been asked to participate in such a capacity. I was very impressed by the level and quality of work. The students had to use AI to generate Python code, etc. So I had a chance to look through the code. We had to make sure it was running, and it was very competitive. So beyond them reaching out to Anguilla, though we didn't have a team, we were the ones who officially judged the competition. This is an avenue and has opened doors for one, Anguilla having a place in the competition next year by presenting and putting a team in. I've already given them feedback and as to means and ways in which we could improve the conference. But coming out of that, I've also been approached by the commissioner, the Office of the Commissioner of the Organization of the Eastern Caribbean States, the OECS, to represent the entire OECS at an upcoming AI conference to be held in the Dominican Republic in early October. So I'm saying this to say that these opportunities when we travel, it's not just because we want to travel for traveling's sake. Sometimes you need to get in the rooms with the right people and get yourself exposed. If we want Anguilla to be known as the AI capital, we won't do it just by having the domain. We need to put ourselves out there. We need to make the connections and make the relations. And that's something that this administration is actively working towards doing. So I look forward to reporting on that at a later date. As it relates to the renewable energy transition, this is the month of September. As you would have known, a few weeks ago, we would have had the Caribbean Development Bank on the ground, a fact-finding mission, doing their research, meeting with stakeholders, etc. This month is the month that they will be having their quarterly board meeting, where hopefully we look to have the loan approved so that we can swiftly continue to progress towards having tangible renewable energy on the ground by next year. Last Thursday, in our meeting of Executive Council, government would have approved the Crown lands to be leased by Anglic, necessary for them to be able to host the solar farm, and that was one of the biggest barriers of entry to them having the loan approved. So seeing that government has given EXCO approval, we expect things to go swiftly and smoothly as it pertains to Anglic being able to secure that loan. And for everything else, we have some further updates within the ministry as it relates to roads, fire, etc., but I'll leave it to my colleague, the Honorable Parliamentary Secretary, to cover those.
Good afternoon to members of the media. Good afternoon to members of the media and those listening via social media and the various platforms. I'll continue from where Honorable Joseph Vanterpool left off. As it relates to the updates on the road projects, the South Hill Road to Jeremiah Gums Highway, the road works continue to progress on the west lane with curb insulation and road surfacing. Lands required have been gazetted, and we are now engaging with Anglic to relocate the poles. Once the poles are relocated, the contractor will continue with utility trenching works, followed by road works on the eastern side of the road. A consultant is being procured to carry out detailed assessments of the road surface conditions throughout Anguilla. So we are currently, assessments will feed into the design and the recommendations for surface treatment solutions to extend the life of the various roads throughout the Anguilla network. The evaluation of this consultant is currently ongoing. If successful, the survey and design work is expected to continue later this year. As it relates to the Sandy Hill Road, we are proceeding with the development of the Sandy Hill Road, which is one of the projects that were approved in 2025. The scope of the project includes a concrete road surface, sidewalks on the side, and a utility trench on the side, underneath the sidewalk. We have started to engage in utilities to coordinate the utility works. Landowners have been contacted, and we are now preparing papers to be submitted to the Gazette Office for lands that are required to do this project. Procurement documents are also being prepared, which include the designs, the bill, quantity, specifications, and also the invitation to open the bid. Work is planned to commence before the end of the year on the Sandy Hill Road. As it relates to the vehicle section, the Government of Anguilla replacement, annual capital is to replace the Government of Anguilla vehicles to ensure fit-for-purpose, efficient, suitable vehicles to its agencies to operate in fulfilling the Government of Anguilla mandate. 7 customized vehicles for the Royal Anguilla Police Force, that was 2024 procurement. I expected all its deliveries is in October to November due to supply issues being experienced in the outfitting of these vehicles. Vehicle replacement procurement for 10 vehicles, that was from 2025. We are still awaiting recommendation for the Vehicle Evaluation Committee to determine a supplier. And if successful, the supplier determined is expect these vehicles within 2 months. Replacement intend to address the following requirements: the HU, the vector control fogging vehicle, the Royal Anguilla Police Force vehicles, that's to reduce the rental costs, vehicles for immigration, transport resident under the Department of Social Development, and also a vehicle for Her Majesty's Prison. As it relates to the building section, the Government of Anguilla office accommodation is a priority to address these office accommodation needs. It will improve the business efficiency commencing 2025 to 2026 execution. Still in the early stages of the project planning, and we want to ensure that these plans are well informed and responsive to address the current and future requirements for the Government of Anguilla as it relates to the building section. Overview for the Maritime Administration. This ministry, September 25th, the Anguilla Maritime Administration and Shipping Registry continues to make proactive strides towards improving safety across the shipping industry. It is guided by the core principles of ensuring safety of life at sea, protection of the marine environment from ship source pollution, and maritime security. Commencing this month and through 2026, we will continue to host our comprehensive training series specifically for vessel operators and vessel owners. These sessions are designed to build capacity, strengthen skills, and promote safer practices. The training will also cover key areas, including but not limited to development and implementation of safety management systems, creating clear operational and emergency procedures, conducting risk identification and assessments, and then ensuring accurate logging and effective record keeping. So additional to the further support of Government Anguilla's commitment to emergency preparedness, specialized training has been organized in partnership with the Fire and Rescue Service, including the Marine Search and Rescue Unit. So this is the overview for as it relates to infrastructure. And as you know, I'm stretched between two ministries, so I'll give an update now as it relates to natural resources. The Ministry of Natural Resources is pleased to provide an update on several key initiatives aimed at strengthening Anguillians' food security and advancing our agricultural sector. Recently, towards the end of August, we have conducted a study tour in Nevis. So a delegation of persons from the Department of Agriculture would have traveled to Nevis on a technical visit late August. The Government of Anguilla would like to extend our sincere thanks for their generosity and support throughout this visit while we were in Nevis. So the main purpose of the visit was to observe some of Nevis department programs aimed at achieving food security and to determine the most appropriate technologies and programs that could be adopted or tailored towards our implementation here in Anguilla. The building this sector takes time. However, with critical investments such as hydroponic greenhouses, abattoirs, processing facilities, we encourage both farmers and the broader market to invest and contribute in its growth. These achievements are possible when there is clear policy guidance, support, and implementation at the highest level. We were able to hear from producers about their journey and to understand what is necessary to move this sector forward here in Anguilla. With approaches we can take to make meaningful difference and to grow agriculture in Anguilla. We want to be able to empower local producers, champion innovation, and also to provide training and education opportunities for young farmers and even older individuals who might be already into farming. With an investment in food security facilities such as abattoirs and food storage depots, it is critical for the investment in development of the agricultural sector and managing the marketing challenges that we sometimes face in Anguilla. We would also be looking at grading, labeling, and branding of agricultural products that will enter the domestic market, especially as it relates to the hotel sector. The Government of Anguilla has embarked on a pilot fruit orchard project aimed at reducing the island's resilience on imported fruits and promoting greater food self-sufficiency. To enhance our local production, the Department of Natural Resources Agriculture Unit is expanding its fruit orchard. Following the successful planting of 100 guava trees, we have now sourced an additional 60 avocado and 60 soursop trees from Dominica, not Dominican Republic. An area is currently being prepared for the planting of these new trees. This initiative is a significant step towards our long-term goal in establishing a food processing facility on the island, which we have a genuine interest in, and we would have seen one in Nevis. So that's why we're expanding and building upon the fruit orchard. The Government of Anguilla is committed to supporting residents also who wish to get involved in this effort by providing assistance to help them get started. So the idea is to have this pilot project, and if there are people that have vacant land, good farmland, we'd encourage them to reach out to the department, and we'll assist them in trying to get the land planted just to be able to grow crops. This initiative forms parts of a broader national strategy to boost local food production, strengthen food security, and reduce the national importation bill. By cultivating fruit trees that are well suited to Anguillan's climate, the orchard will supply fresh produce to the community while also creating opportunities for agricultural training and employment. Also, as it relates to the market and the shade houses, work is underway to secure the local market facility with the procurement shutters to prevent loitering and the property from being damaged to outside of operating hours. In our efforts to boost crop production, 8 to 20 planned shade houses have been erected. We also are in the process of acquiring additional shade houses, which are of a different design than these that are currently here, to better accommodate vertical hydroponics farming and a modern and more efficient method for cultivation of local crops. The ministry remains committed to these and other initiatives that support our farmers and ensure a sustainable and secure food for Anguilla. We'd like to thank you for your continued interest and support, and we look forward to sharing more updates as we make further progress within the different ministries and various departments. This government is committed to putting people first, and in every decision that we make, ensuring that our actions serve with the best interests of Anguillians. We'll now turn it over to the Honorable Neil Rogers.
Thank you very much, Cardell, and a pleasant good afternoon to you all who are here, and to those of you who are viewing or listening via the various media methods. I too would want to congratulate my colleagues for the hard work that they've been doing and for staying focused and steadfast despite the many comments out there by the opposition. You won't get us off guard or pull off side, you know. We remain focused and steadfast. An update in terms of healthcare. First of all, let me continue to thank the staff at the Department of Health Services for the work that they've been doing under some very stressful conditions, and to thank them for their patience so far and for working through what I would describe as avoidable situations. And these situations arose as a direct result of the former administration not giving in-depth thought in terms of the dismantling of the health authority and reverting to the Department of Health Services without looking into the services that are provided and the operational institutions that will be affected along the way. I want to thank them for the patience, as I mentioned earlier, for waiting and still waiting on their on-call and call-out allowances for July and August. Still being worked on, as I was reliably informed. Why it has taken so long could be anybody's guess. And as I stated earlier, some of the avoidable situations as a result of the transfer from one to the other. And I was assured that the employees of the now Department of Health Services did not experience these sort of delays when it was under the Health Authority of Anguilla. So you could imagine the frustration. I want to say to them that the restoration of salaries that this administration has promised is being worked on. I would have just had a look at what the Department of Health Services would have put together at the request of the Ministry of Finance for the restoration of the salaries. They are actually working out what the cost would be. And as I have indicated already, that the Department of Health Services employees should be and would be retroactive from the date on which the restoration took place for the rest of the civil service. So that is something that is being worked on, and Premier and Minister of Finance, it's on its way to the Ministry of Finance with the quantums that are required in order to be able to make sure that these essential workers be treated and treated fairly going forward. Staffing issues. Number of staffing issues at the Department of Health Services. Of course, as you know, healthcare workers, whether it's the nurses, folks in radiology, the folks in allied health, the medical professionals, and so on and so forth, require specialized training. And from time to time, we have to, and we will continue to embark upon recruiting trained personnel from outside of Anguilla. We always like to say, hey, you know, Anguillians first, and I subscribe to that, and I totally support that. But in situations, let's not fool ourselves. In the healthcare industry, there's no one country on earth that has 50% or more of their healthcare workers being local, so to speak. So we are in that. A number of nursing positions have been filled over the last 2 to 3 months with individuals from the region. We continue to seek and to attract healthcare workers, trained healthcare workers from throughout. As a matter of fact, we've gone as far as India, so to speak, and the Philippines, to be able to have the quality, experience, and well-trained healthcare personnel to be put in place so that we'll be able to improve the quality of healthcare services and delivery to the people of Anguilla. There's no need to, hide our faces with respect to that. That is basically what is taking place. And even with respect to that, we're having difficulties because interviews would have taken place, and when the job offers in terms of the remuneration and the other benefits, some of those professionals would have said, hey, wait a minute, hold up. That's not what we envisage, taking into consideration their research as to the cost of living in Anguilla compared to the salaries. There is a public sector reform project that is going on now, and we are hoping that, taking into consideration all the dynamics in terms of Anguilla, that something positive would come out of that. I mentioned about the hiring of several nurses and several other healthcare-related professionals. They themselves, as well as the Department of Health Services, seem to be somewhat frustrated in terms of the duration, the length of time it is taken to have these individuals go through public administration and all sorts of government bureaucracy, I would say, to be able to put them in place. It's getting better from public administration, but there's still a lot of nuances, that are there and are time-consuming. I would also like to report that we would have sent off 3 nurses, 3 local nurses, to begin their course of studies in general nursing, BSN in nursing, BSCN in nursing, at the Barbados Community College in Barbados, which is affiliated with the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in terms of the practicum and so on. And there is one who has gone off to the UK to study as well. Because there's no doubt, if we're going to look at improving the quality of healthcare, we've got to prepare and train our healthcare professionals. And while I'm on that, I would just like to put out there that we will begin a program going into the high school to recruit some of the young folks who are interested in the healthcare professions, to be able to guide them along and to let them know that this administration is in their corner in terms of looking for scholarships and sponsorships, so to speak, so that we'll be able to come back and serve the community. We also have 2 nursing assistants who are in Jamaica at the moment. They'll be doing some courses in relation to wound care, footwork and wound care, and so you'll have a lot of diabetics who would have certain wounds, and from time to time there are other conditions that may develop, whether it's bed sores or any other wound that you may have would need treated. We've gone past the age of where you just replace the dressing, so to speak. Wound care is a specialty in itself, and we are preparing for that. As I said, 2 individuals are actually in Jamaica as we speak. I would also like to encourage our general practitioners who are part of the Department of Healthcare Services to look at specialties, because healthcare has evolved so much so now that specializing is almost a must. And long gone the days when, thank God for Arjun Jagan, who was here, who seemed to have specialized in everything. At one time was the only doctor on the island, so to speak, so he had to do everything. Those days are behind us now, and as a result of that, I am encouraging our practitioners who are part of the Department of Healthcare Services to look into applying to various schools and in terms of specialties. This administration, we believe in putting people first. We believe in putting our people first. We believe in putting all peoples first, up front, in relation to healthcare services. So I'm saying to them, all, whether it's the general practitioners, we're looking for medical technologists, nurses, radiologists, pharmacists, med techs, you name it, biomedical engineers, and so on and so forth. There is a shortage, and a severe shortage, of healthcare professionals in Anguilla. So much so that the folks who are on staff, if one person would call out sick, it seemed to disrupt the whole system, so to speak. And as a result of that, of course, the general public would be complaining about the services, and rightfully so, but not knowing what is happening behind the scenes, they could only make judgment or cast judgment on the services that they are being exposed to. So we're looking at all of those things, and in an effort, some of the folks who are, I would say, overworked, they're human beings, and at times, even though we are very professional, sometimes we snap. Human nature takes over. So we're working on that. Moving forward, we would have had discussions with the Anguilla Community College about assessing a program for soft skills training for medical professionals. And you may have to dovetail that into customer service for the entire civil service, because there are complaints out there as well in terms of how the public is being addressed in certain situations. And I want to be clear. I am not trying a blanket over all the civil servants. I'm saying that there are issues, just like there are issues in healthcare, that we need to deal with from a public perception. So I'm appealing, not only to the school leavers, but to all of those folks who are interested in the improvement of our healthcare services to be on the lookout. And our numbers are public. If there's a concern, please let us know. We are encouraging that. We're not taking it as criticism, so to speak. We are taking it as concerns so that we'll be able to address the situations that one would encounter at our healthcare facilities. Naturally, I believe that if I am a patient in the healthcare services and needs healthcare treatment here, I may be treated different than someone else. And those are some of the things that we need to really put aside and address so that a patient is a patient is a patient. So we're looking at it. Again, I have to make the comparisons and I have to ask the questions, And I know that some folks in the civil service who are listening, or who may listen to this a little later on, will think that I'm going after them publicly. But I will say what I have to say, public, private, or anywhere else. We have a situation over at the hospital where for the last, I would say, 3 months, it's either between procurement and the Department of Health Services, wherever it is, it needs to be pulled out and worked on immediately. Procurement for a critical branch UPS. And I'll give a little bit of my medical background. I did a little bit of medical engineering and biomedical engineering. So I have a pretty good idea as to some of these, what is needed with some of these things. A critical branch UPS for Princess Alexandra Hospital is a UPS system where the lab, dialysis, radiology, and the operation of our main operating theater is necessary. You don't spend millions of dollars for very sensitive equipment and plug it into an outlet in the wall. That is long gone. That is where the critical care UPS is needed. That system, plugged into the wall and fully charged, just like you charge your phone, can supply the electricity for those areas between 5 and 8 hours. So in other words, the spike in electricity that will damage some of the very sensitive equipment would be negated. I don't know whether it's sole source, competitive bidding or whatever would go through procurement, but somebody who's listening to me need to be able to address this and address it immediately. Again, I would like to thank, and I would have said it before, my family, the U.S. family who's been coming to Anguilla. They own a villa here. They've been contributing to the overall development in healthcare over the years, for their invaluable contribution and for their commitment to establishing part of the radiology department, the mammography equipment, up to the tune of $500,000 US. I want to thank them publicly and on behalf of the government and people of Anguilla for their continued support in assisting us in developing and providing the quality of health care. That being said, we are also pursuing the purchase of an ultrasound, up-to-date, modernized piece of equipment that will be able to use it, make sure it's compatible with all of the technologies that are out there, telemedicine and all of those sort of things. that are available to us. We're looking at the ultrasound, we're looking at a C-arm machine, we're looking at orthopedic equipment and retrofitting a theater, an operating theater that has been over at Princess Alexandra Hospital since the expansion and had never been used, so to speak. So we are retrofitting that particular theater with, the laminar airflow and all of those sort of things, so that we'll be able to use that theater in terms of orthopedic work that we intend to start, ophthalmology, and in the event that the main theater goes down, we will be able to use that as well. Of course, orthopedics and ophthalmology, they are scheduled operations, so to speak, and whereas the main theater would be there for emergencies at any time. Sometimes, things, for one reason or another, is not able to be used. So we got to get away from this whole notion of having one, so to speak. I mentioned earlier in terms of the staffing, when one person calls out, the whole thing goes into turmoil because of that. We got to get away from that and make sure that when we're dealing with healthcare services and delivery and we want to improve on them, we have to make sure that we have adequate staffing to be able to deal with some of those issues. In healthcare, it is what we call the fireman syndrome. In other words, firemen are necessary 24/7. Does it mean that you have a fire every day or every 2 days? Does it mean that you have a fire at 1 a.m. one day and the next day you don't have any? The point I'm trying to make here is that whenever there is a fire or whenever there isn't a fire, the personnel must be available. So we got to go past all of that stuff. I also would like to thank the OECS for their generous and gracious sponsorship or contribution of a new oxygen generating plant for Anguilla. The equipment is on island. The manufacturers should be here later this week or early next week to set it up and do the testing and so on and so forth. This will allow us to produce 100 of those oxygen containers, the tanks that you would see from time to time, 100 of them with this generating plant. There is a small generating plant over there that produces 10. So we are moving from 10 up to 100. This will allow us to take a look at extending the oxygen supply in the hospital, where we are going to look into the possibility of piped oxygen, because parts of the hospital is equipped for that. We'll have to probably run new pipes and do the testing of the pipes for leaks and all of that sort of stuff to be able to do it rather than have the tanks standing up beside the bed and so on. We can plug it in from the wall, so we're looking at that, going forward. And with the capacity of this particular plant, we would be able to do that. So again, a lot of work is taking place over there. Some may say, well, you all are putting in quite a bit of investment into that facility, and there's always talk about a new hospital. Yes. And in terms of a new hospital, we will be putting in, making provisions, let's say, for the conceptual drawings and the preliminary works and the design and so on and so forth, because that will take some time. We are not going to be as irresponsible as the former administration to put a quantum in the budget to have facilities being constructed. No plans, no preliminary design, no concepts and so on, just a high pitch for an election. I don't know who would want to build something this day and age without having a plan. And some of the buildings that they are boasting about, while we welcome them, the general public will have a view as to the thought process and the planning process that was put into those things. Are we going to put down a building just because it's a newer building than the Princess Alexandra Hospital? No. Are we going to put down a building that is fit for purpose and that is thought out with the concepts and the preliminary work? That is what we are going to do. Preparation. Not that we are going to get everything right, but we are going to minimize the things that we don't get right and be able to put them in place, as opposed to no planning and having a magnitude of things to be corrected and corrected within a year or two of a new building. So the work in health is ongoing. I must thank my colleagues for their support, because health is real and it's all of our business. My great-grandmother was not able to read and write, and I'm sure that you would have known her, Mr. Harrigan. But at the end of the day, while she lived over 100 years, at some point in time she got sick. So, may not have made $1 million, work hard, till the soil and cut bush and plant peas and everything else. But she lived a long life and she got sick at times. So the point I'm making here is that it doesn't matter whether we are educated, it doesn't matter we are rich, it doesn't matter whether we are poor, it doesn't matter whether we are elected or unelectables, so to speak. At some point in time, that healthcare will confront us. And we're trying to put this country in a position whereby we will improve the quality of health care in Anguilla. And let me say this now politically, that people, the age of 18 and older, Madam Premier, according to the Constitution and the Electoral Act, are allowed to vote in Anguilla. Okay, and while infrastructure is important, don't get me wrong, we are here at this table because of people voting for us, and we must put our people first. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Neil Rogers. Just 2 points to make before I open the question for floors. The floor for questions. The total public debt at the end of August is $307 million. At the end of June, it was $312.99 million. So there's been a decrease of about $7 million between June and the end of August. In terms of Anglic dividend, there was a question that was asked from the floor at the last press conference. We are currently awaiting a response from the ECCB Securities Commission before those dividends could be released so we can move forward with that. So the Government of Anguilla is waiting for information from the ECCB Securities Commission before any information could be released in relation to that. So I'll open the floor for questions. Thank you.
Lloyd Gums, Lloyd's Live. To Mr. Rogers first. As an overseas British territory, are we allowed to encourage students to go to Cuba to study?
To be frank, I am not too sure about that. I mean, I know of a particular Dr. Gums.
Dr. Gums, she studied at
Cuba. She would have studied, and I think Dr. Carbon would have studied in Cuba. I don't know what the mechanism was. I know there are a lot of folks from the independent countries, Dominica and St. Lucia and so on and so forth. But I am not aware in terms of what is required, for that.
That's something we need to look in.
Yeah, we'll find. But before you go, I know that there are a number of doctors at PAH who actually studied in Cuba, so I will find out, exactly what it is. And we have the anesthesiologist, I believe, is Cuban, and I think a number of other Cuban employees over there as well. So I would find out. I don't know, but I will find out.
You made mention that one of the challenges that the government of Anguilla, the health authority of
Department of Health
the
Services.
Department of Health Services of Anguilla have is recruiting new personnel. What incentives is your department offering to these professionals?
Well, we have to be guided by what comes out of public administration. Remember now that under the health authority, it was a different mechanism set up, you know, so we would have been able to address certain things compared to what it is now. Like, for instance, the policies that were under the health authority as it relates to professionals is different than what government has. And I can just give an example. Let's say, for instance, hospital privileges. You know, I know of a physician who, under the health authority, was given privileges to work at PAH. He also works down at Hughes Medical Center. Under government now, another physician who would want those same privileges, and it has taken up to 6 months in order to do that. Whereas under the health authority, the patient care committee would have gone in and looked at his qualifications, would have made sure that he was registered to practice in Anguilla, would have made sure that he had malpractice insurance to cover him and so on, and do their due diligence, and bingo, you know, approve it. But under the government, I don't know, and some of them don't know exactly what is going on because there are no policies. So all of that is being worked on. It's a work in progress, you know, so that we can compare and contrast, you know, getting things done. Again, you know, physicians would want to know if they could engage in private practice and all of those sort of things, because coming from different countries, even some of those who may have hospital privileges or who may be with government, you know, there is that possibility for them, taking into consideration the size of our population and the salaries that we give here. You really and truly won't attract the best of the best, because at the end of they discovering the 33 beaches or 35 beaches we got, you know, they're going to want to be able to make some money for themselves and their family as well, you know.
Mr. Richardson, you made mention that you all have planted out 150 guava trees. That's correct?
150 guavas? No, 100 guavas.
100 guavas. As a horticulturalist, I just hope that in terms of utilizing the space, that the guavas be on the far western side due to the attraction of whiteflies that would normally spread readily through your cultivation.
Well, yeah, I'm aware of the flies that the guava trees carry to, so I fully support.
You made mention that you're continuing with the construction of the road in Sandy Hill, the Sandy Hill Beach Road. What are the plans for the North Hill Main Road?
Well, the North Hill Main Road, the surveying and stuff like that wasn't done as yet. The drawings will have to be also done. So they're...
Sorry, just wanted to add a bit of clarification to that. As it relates to the North Hill Road, the surveying was actually done, but however, despite the surveying being done, the layouts and the drawings in terms of the plans have not been completed. As we have mentioned before at previous press conferences, the 5 roads that were selected as priority by the previous administration would have costed a total envelope of $10.7 million. However, what was budgeted was only $7 million. So when we're looking to complete the South Hill to Jeremiah Road, that will take just under $4 million. So in terms of what was left within the envelope to be able to build out the North Hill Road, 1, there was a constraint there in terms of the amount of monies that were left, but 2, there were no plans that are currently there. So we have instructed the ministry to go forward and prepare plans for the design of the North Hill Road. So that is currently being designed. But in terms of moving forward with the Sandy Hill Road, and just for the edification of the general public. You first survey the road. You then get the layouts that you can then lead into the designs. The designs then will then inform the land matters. Which parcels of land are you encroaching on? Which landowners do you need to negotiate with, etc. So by not having the plans, this is still very early into the process. So as much as the North Hill Road was promised for this year, there's still a lot of work that needs to go into actually bringing it to fruition. With the Sandy Hill Road now, it's a much shorter road. So in terms of the cost can be dealt with from the current allocation from this year, as well as there were only 3 landowners, I believe, that were involved in terms of they would have needed to be contacted, and all of that was already done. So because that was already done and that could be done and it was an easier thing to facilitate and we could do it with the budget, we have decided to proceed with that. But as it relates to the North Hill Road, as well as the other roads to include, for example, the road going from St. Mary's down to the high school, we are currently proceeding with those roads, but they're currently in the stage of evaluating for the purposes of design, as well as reaching out to landowners, because none of that was done prior to us coming into office.
You made mention that there may be a delay of 3 weeks for the opening of the new Clayton J. Lloyd International Airport. What's the time span in reference to the demolition of the old terminal?
Well, the plan is that once the operational readiness and testing is done and we transition over to the new airport terminal, the next phase immediately will be to parcel and block off where the existing terminal building is to go straight into demolition. In terms of between demolition and completion of the project, we're envisaging 6 months. So as was mentioned earlier, the final date of all in May, I believe it was May 3rd, but the first week in May is still the targeted date for full demolition, full apron, and full completion of the airport terminal building part of the package.
Good afternoon, James Harrigan from the Anguilla newspaper. Still with Mr. Joseph Anapool. Congratulations on your newborn.
Thank you very
may
much.
say. And I just want to ask a question based upon the same aim of Bermuda Air, and the statement made by Mr. Cardigan Connor. Since you said that there is no agreement for minimum revenue guarantees, are you then negating or annulling the statement made by Mr. Connor? Or how do you treat that statement?
So, first of all, there is an agreement, but the agreement does not contain a minimum revenue guarantee. I was not watching the press conference when it was happening live, but when someone did bring it up to me and I did review the clip, what I would say is it doesn't necessarily negate what he was said, but I can see how he was said and how the conversation took place might have led persons to be able to infer or assume otherwise. So just for the purposes of clarity is why I'm coming and making it abundantly clear that regardless of how people might spin or take away from that conversation, the government of Anguilla has not entered into any minimum revenue guarantee agreements with Bermuda Air.
Okay. In terms of the update on Anglic for the Watco building, how is that progressing?
In terms of progress at the Waco building specifically, I would have to reach out to perhaps the CEO of Anglic or the board of Anglic in terms of seeing how things are progressing with that part of the project specifically. My conversations with Anglic, other than stuff to deal with the ministry and to do with things locally on the ground, has been predominantly focused on the delivery of renewable energy and making sure we meet the requirements and stipulations set out by the Caribbean Development Bank, of which, as I would have stated, the biggest one was the land issues which were resolved last week in Executive Council. But as it relates to the Waco building, those, I would say, lesser operational matters, I would have to reach out to get specifics in terms of updates on that.
So is there a bottleneck in that project right now in terms of acquiring,
Sorry, a bottleneck in terms of what part of the project? Are we talking about Waco or are
Waco.
we talking about the lands?
Waco building?
I have not been informed of any bottlenecks, and if so, I'm not aware of any at this time.
Okay. What about the lands to release to Anglic?
Yes. So
Yeah.
Executive Council
Where
would have met.
are those lands located?
Where are those lands, sorry?
Where are those lands located? I mean, in which area of the island?
They're located in the general corridor area, so they would include the land where the previous solar farm was located, as well as some of the crown lands in the surrounding areas, some of which government had no leasehold agreements on, some of which government had previous leasehold agreements that have since expired, so the land is available for use, but all of the lands that we have leased to Anglic thus far are in the vicinity and directly adjacent to the existing facilities in Corridor.
Okay. All right. Is there any update on the, I think this question will go to Mrs. Richardson Hodge, in terms of the rent for this building. We spoke about it several times before. Is there a new conclusion as to who received the rent?
Well, currently, there's no rent being paid. And that was stopped from under the previous administration. On the last one of the press conferences, I indicated that the government's intent was to start paying rent again. However, since then, we've done some due diligence in terms of the state of the lease agreements, and we have questions in relation to that. So we're in the process of obtaining legal advice from the AG's chambers in terms of the lease agreements, the validity of them, and how we move forward.
Okay.
So you'll hear further about that in due course.
Okay. Mr. Rogers, there was some speculation or some conversation about a national health insurance for many years now. How do we really get that materialized?
National Health Fund?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, basically, a lot of work has taken place already in terms of the National Health Fund. I know when I served previously as Minister of Health, we would have done quite a bit of work with Social Security and so on and so forth. And let me put it this way. National Health Fund or National Health Insurance is a fund that needs to be thought out properly. It has to be funded. We will not be as lucky, let's say, as the Social Security scheme that was set up many years ago. I believe it had a decade of contributions before the first check was written. When a national health insurance scheme is put in place, there will be capital calls on that particular fund immediately. I go back to the interim stabilization levy that was put in place under administration when there were some financial difficulties, in balancing the budgets and so on and so forth. And after those solutions were met, that interim stabilization fund should have been morphed into, or you get some seed money out of that in order to be able to fund the National Health Fund. So you're having contributions coming in and so on and so forth. What we are going to look at and how we are going to approach it is that, are you going to look at establishing, let's say, Anguilla National Health Fund, or are you going to look at it in terms of insurance, health insurance that will cover the entire island, everyone who is here, who living on Anguilla? Would it be necessary or would it be cost effective? Would you have more coverage by going the route of establishing a national health fund for Anguilla, or, attracting other insurance companies and sitting down and having those conversations with them, going forward? So all of that, it's a process, and we're going to look at it. And I'm not saying that we're going to look at it today, tomorrow, and the next day, because you have a lot of things that are taking place here now, and a lot of cleaning up that is necessary in order to move this country forward, particularly in health and in a number of other ministries and portfolios. But it is on the table in terms of improving the quality of health care services and delivery. It is there. But in terms of ensuring our people, we have to have the services that we could justify the insurances and so on, moving to it. That's what it is. It is a part of the overall scheme of things in terms of not only affordability, but in terms of improvement of quality care as well.
A question for Mr. Shelia Rogers Webster. In terms of insurance again, are all the members of staff in the schools, do they have insurance?
No. So there's been a government policy for quite a while. The answer to that question is no. So there's been a government policy for quite a while that persons who are considered unestablished workers don't receive pensions or insurance. As an administration, this is not the direction we would like to go in to take, but this isn't solely our responsibility either, because even though we can make budgetary allocations for such, as you know, employees of the Government of Anguilla come under the governor and the deputy governor's office. And so provisions will have to be made for those persons who are considered unestablished workers to be considered established and receive those same government benefits. Now, the reality is there are different grades of unestablished workers as well, because you have some persons who just work a couple hours in the afternoon, but you have a number of unestablished workers who work full-time schedules, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Also, a number of those persons work in very dangerous conditions and they don't have access to insurance. So we have discussed these issues at length. The governor's office and the deputy governor's office are fully aware of our position in relation to a number of those positions.
I focus mainly right now on the school crossing guards, those guards that protect the children as they cross the street. Their job is very, very vulnerable.
I understand that, but I will say though, when persons are hired, they know that they are hired as unestablished workers. So it's not like they don't know what benefits they receive when they are hired. So again, it is something that we are working on, we're looking into, but that is the reality.
Okay. And the crossing guards are not established?
No.
Okay.
There are also certain minimum requirements that currently exist to become official government workers, and a number of those persons don't have those qualifications as well. So that's another issue and another challenge. So government's policy would have to change to go in that direction generally as well. But like I say, it's something that's definitely on our radar, because a number of those persons, maintenance workers, a number of persons, and education has the largest amount of unestablished workers.
Yeah.
So it's a serious consideration.
Okay, my last question is pertaining to prizes for Carnival, Summer Festival in particular. Have all prizes been paid at this time?
Yes.
And can the public expect a report anytime soon on Carnival last year and this year?
I can't speak to last year, as I wasn't the sitting minister, but you can certainly expect a report for this year. The CFO, we call her, the Chief Financial Officer, she had one more final invoice to come in, and then once she gets back off of vacation, she's supposed to update the QuickBooks, and then we'll have the final report that she will submit to the permanent secretary, because the permanent secretary is the accounting officer for revision, and then it will be available.
Are we saying then that last year, well, it was a farm administration, but last year would not be accounted for?
I wouldn't say that last year wouldn't be accounted for. The information is there. I'm sure the permanent secretary would have received some level of what was paid out or what wasn't paid out. I'm in terms of releasing reports or anything, I would want to be responsible for things within my remit.
Mrs. Webster Rogers, you made mention earlier that there were two receipts that, two vendors that are left to be paid. Mm-hmm. After this, is there a deficit or surplus?
There's no surplus. There's been from the very inception, Carnival has had significant overruns, which I've said that from the very beginning, that the amount that was budgeted for Carnival, in my opinion, was inadequate. So,
Historic.
no, not historic, not historic. This year, the budgetary allocation for 2025 We recognize very early it would have been inadequate to be able to put on the level of summer festival that we wanted to put on within the 4 months. So we expected that we would exceed the budgeted amount, and we did exceed the budgeted amount.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Mrs. Premier. You'd have mentioned about plans for a private pension fund and a unemployment fund through Social Security. A couple years now, we've known that Social Security hasn't been exactly in good financial standing. Is it now in a stable position to provide those benefits to persons?
I wouldn't say that Social Security is not in good financial standing. I would
It
say
was on the
that
verge of collapse within a few years if many changes
the
weren't made.
actuarial report would have indicated that if increases had not been made, then at some point in the future, then yes, the fund would not be able to sustain itself. But any new program would not depend on what is currently coming in. And so there would have to be a recognition that if the people of Anguilla want to be secured with having an unemployment benefit program, that there is some funding that would have to go into it from the people themselves. And that's why I tied it with the private pension plan, because if you're paying in additional monies, et cetera, to fund this program, then you could say that on retirement, you ought to be able to receive that money back. And so that is the scheme that in the round we're looking at.
In relation to, Mr. Vanderpool, congrats on your son or daughter. Yeah. In relation to ANLEC and the plans for renewable energy, you mentioned that there are some lands. What is the total acreage needed for the renewable energy program?
I want to be cautious because I don't want to misquote off the top of my head. Right now, I believe the answer to that is 37. But yes, I'll want to follow up and get back to you on that because I can't remember the exact figure off the top of my head. The one thing that I will say at this point in time is the lands that we are currently doing in the current phase that we're doing with the CDB is for 10 to 12 megawatts of solar in the first instance, but this only represents phase one of what we're looking to do with respect to the renewable energy transition. So once this is up and running, we will still need additional lands as we continue to progress to further and further stages.
Okay, so as it is now, there are enough lands available for phase one.
Ms. Fortin? Yeah, so just to confirm, my colleague would have indicated that the lands that we are trying to do is 40, but I believe it was 37 that they need, so there was a bit of wiggle room. But in terms of all of the lands that we have identified and that we are currently securing is enough for securing phase one of the project, yes.
Okay. And you have to be thinking about the future for phase two. What are the plans at this moment for the additional lands?
Well,
Will they be in the same area?
the lands that we are looking at are in the same area, but I can say that there are a number of different options that we're exploring at this time. Some of the lands that we're looking at, for example, if we were to incorporate elements such as wind in the next phase, may be suitable for both of them to coexist at the same time. But this is something that's dynamic and active and that we're currently actively exploring, because we might find that at this very moment, one piece of land may be identified as the most suitable for phase two. But 2 months from now, something else may develop our shore that is more conducive for such. So it's a moving target at the moment, but one that we are actively chasing down. So I don't want to lock into any specific answer there.
Are these lands at the moment owned crown lands or private individuals also?
So ANGLEC has identified some lands owned by private individuals that they are also interested in, but ANGLEC as a private company is negotiating with those private landowners directly. The lands that we are speaking in reference to, the 40 acres, these are crown lands that are owned by government, so it's within our purview to be able to give authority for these lands.
And you would have mentioned that the loan approval could happen this month when the CDB meets.
Yes, the board meeting to consider the loan with the CDB is this month.
And once approved, how long will it take before we see phase one completed?
Now completed. See, now left up to me, I would say the end of the year, because that's when ideally I would have loved to have had it. But large-scale projects like these, the procurement, the sourcing, and all of that, that's really and truly not realistic. We are looking by the beginning and end of the second quarter of next year. So we're hoping that worst case scenario, worst case as of now, that end of May. Best case, perhaps maybe April.
Yeah. I know that over the years we are in a hurricane-prone zone, and we would have seen with Hurricane Irma where the whole entire network would have been demolished by Hurricane Irma. All the poles and lines are down. Plans to go underground with the electrical infrastructure.
Oh, that's not actually where I saw that question going. Plans to go underground with the electrical infrastructure is something that we're going to have to discuss and work with Anglic long-term for. It is quite an expensive venture because, you know, we have to dig trenches. Some places have extremely hard rock, so it's costly, but it's something that for our future resilience is something that we do want to work towards in terms of achieving and moving as much of that underground as possible. So we will be working with Anglic on that. Where I thought you were going with the question would have been the fact that in 2017, the solar panels that were put down were actually destroyed by Hurricane Irma. Now, that 1 megawatt plant that was installed did provide a lot of lessons to be learned. CDB was also instrumental in provisioning that project. So the fact that it did not sustain or it did not survive the hurricane is something that for them, they are very vested in working with us to see get back up and running again because they feel like they have a personal stake and some personal fault for the fact that that project did not meet the resilience that it needed. No. Between 2017 and now, there have been a lot of advancements as it relates to the technology. A lot of lessons have been learned, not only throughout the region, but other places that are prone to storms. A lot of lessons learned have been going into the design and will go into the implementation phase to ensure that what happened in 2017 will not happen again this time around.
Yes. Back to the proposal for underground electrical infrastructure. I know at a recent press conference when Mr. Kyle Hodge was here talking about plans for the revamping of the water network, I would have kind of proposed that we can do the two together, the electrical underground while they're doing the new pipes of water in the near future.
So these are discussions that are being had between our various ministries. Reason being, if you're going to be fixing the road and doing water and going into the trench and into the ground one time, there are significant efficiencies and cost savings you can get by doing so. So yes, it does make sense to do it all at the same time if you're able to do so. In terms of, in a practical sense, there might be some challenges with that. For example, you may need to be walking on a road in the west when you get a critical issue with water that immediately needs to be addressed in the east. You may not have lines in the exact timing and places or resource management to be able to coordinate it, but as much as possible, we will be working to try and coordinate efforts between water and roads to ensure that we do get those cost savings, the efficiencies as much as possible. But we can't say that every time a water pipe goes here, the road will be done, and every time a road's being done, water will be done. But as much as is reasonably possible, we will try to maximize on those savings.
Back to Madam Premier, sorry. The free movement of persons through CARICOM, yes, has been, developing in recent years. 4 countries, Barbados, Belize, Dominica, and St. Vincent, are proposing for have complete free movement of their citizens. And I know here we struggle with a problem of growing the population over the years. You see that now the population is under 15,000. What plans are there for us to grow our population with our regional friends and family further abroad?
So there's one key distinction between the countries that you've mentioned and Anguilla, and that is we are a British overseas territory and they're independent countries. And we are also associate members of CARICOM and the OECS. So we are limited by virtue of being an overseas territory in terms of participating in a number of programs that the other independent countries participate in. To answer your point in terms of growing the population, we believe that there has to be a sustained and planned way in which we develop and grow Anguilla and our population. I was excited when the Minister of Economic Development, Honorable Kyle Hodge, last week in the Executive Council have brought forward a paper for the establishment of a committee for the National Development Plan. And that would have been on the books just about to be launched back in 2017 when Hurricane Irma would have hit. And as a result of that, the Commission of a National Development Plan took a back seat. Every country that's certainly serious about developing its country and identifying the ways in which it wants to develop the young people, the avenues for economic activity, establishment of industries are done by way of a national development plan for the country. And so that committee is in the process of being established, and that work will help to feed into answering your question as to how we can best develop our population.
Madam Premier, I thought that you'd have gone a route and explained to him how to develop the country, populate the country as an example of Jose.
Well, I could look at you as well. Like,
Yes. The residency by investment program, how much persons are currently living here based on that as a benefactor of the residency by investment?
so I like the fact that you ask these type of questions that require investigation, right? And that's one of the questions. It doesn't fall under my ministry, it falls under economic development. But I can tell you that the residency by investment program actually spans a number of different programs. So the answer is not a simple answer. And I say that because when the residency by investment program was first established, it grandfathered in a number of persons who are already here in Anguilla. So if you owned property in excess of $750,000, you were able to apply and obtain residency by investment through that route. So you had the persons who were grandfathered in, and then you had persons who would have paid, purchased real estate and applied for it, or by economic residency, paying a certain amount, I believe it's $400,000 to be able to apply for the economic residency. So I'll take a note so that the Minister of Economic Development, when he next comes on, will be able to give you that information, but I do not have those specific numbers for you.
But while it's on my head, would any consideration be given to, say, reduce the amount for residential investment? You mentioned $750,000 and economic residence of $400,000 a year. Would any consideration be given to significantly reduce that for, say, regional countries?
Yeah, so the residency by investment program actually needs an overhaul. It needs a review, and that was actually discussed a couple of weeks ago, because we need to look at how it has operated, whether it has actually delivered the returns that were anticipated, and adjust so that we can see how we can leverage the best that we can use in the program. So it is going to be under review very shortly.
And the minister recently changed the board for the organization that's responsible for it. So it's in the works and revamping is happening.
In relation to the upcoming GMC, what have discussions been like with the other OTs so far, and what do you plan to raise when you go to London?
Yeah, so we are actually due to meet in terms of the overseas territories in October. I believe it's the third week in October. And so coming out of that, we'll probably be able to fine tune from a joint perspective what we want to see. You're aware that, or you probably should be aware that all of the OTs are looking at constitutional reform. And in TCI, in December of 2024, they actually would have brought forward a new constitution. The BVI is currently looking at constitutional reform, all of the Cayman Islands, etc. So too is Anguilla. And in fact, between this week and next week, we'll be moving forward with the Executive Council, as I mentioned, the creation of that committee. So constitution reform definitely is on the agenda. There was water, I think funding for water that had been given to the government, and so the Honorable Kyle Hodge will be in attendance to be able to move forward in terms of our project. You're aware that the overhaul of the water infrastructure will cost some $50 million, and so the UK government did provide some sort of funding already, and we want to explore their commitment in terms of additional funding. And while we are at the JMC, we will take the opportunity, once the JMC has ended, to meet with the diaspora and have fruitful discussions, updates, etc. while we're there. And so those are two of the items on the agenda. I can't specifically recall what the other items are. Beneficial ownership, that is something that is very active, and the UK government is very keen on ensuring that all of the OTs put in place a beneficial ownership register. How that would look is a discussion that we are continuing to have.
Some time ago, you would have heard that after the ABC Supplies and Government of Anguilla court case with the GST credits, right, that some monies would be paid to ABC. Has these funds been transferred?
No, and it's a very unfortunate situation. The GST was implemented in 2022, and we're in 2025, and whatever that
What's causing the hold up?
I'm sorry?
What's causing the hold
Well,
up?
there were remember, this is ongoing from before my time. It went to court. There was a decision that was ultimately made. When we took office, there were discussions that were ongoing, and so it was my job to be able to progress it to a conclusion in as much as it was a court case and the court had made a decision. So right now we're waiting for advice from the Attorney General's chambers to confirm whatever it is that we need to do to be able to bring it to a conclusion.
And to your knowledge, how much money would this?
I can't specifically recall the amount, but it would be a verifiable amount coming out of the exercise. So just to remind the general public, this would have been in relation to the IGT, that savings would have been applied, etc., and that company would have applied to the government for a refund, and they would deny the refund. And it was that caused them to go to court. The court made a determination, and so that the assessment of how much that refund would be is what we're in the process of determining.
You ready?
No, you want to go ahead.
Pleasant good afternoon, Shavian ATN Voices Radio. I want to start by asking to the Honorable Jose Vanterpool. Congratulations on your new family. With the increasing influx of sargassum affecting Anguilla's beaches, marine ecosystems, and tourism industry, what comprehensive strategies is the government implementing to mitigate its impact, support affected communities, and ensure long-term environmental and economic resilience?
Okay, so this question would be one that's better suited to Minister Kyle Hodge, as this would fall under Department of Natural Resources.
Oh, yes.
What I can say is that I know that he has been in discussions with, when we look at, for example, waste management throughout the region, he has been in discussions with territories that have been neighboring us to kind of figure out how we can address waste management, and part of how he has been looking into how we can address waste management is to incorporate the sargassum aspect of it, so that we kind of get a 2-for-1 where we can find a sustainable means and way of addressing the regular influx that we get to our shores. But in terms of going into more depth as to the specifics of the plan or how those discussions are ongoing, I think it would be best to pose that question to him at the next press conference.
In relation to the Vivian Vanterpool Primary School, the Education Department has requested new spending to be able to facilitate any cleanups anytime there is sargassum that affects the school. So in the current budget, there are no budgetary allocations for it, but we're ensuring that moving forward, education has direct control over that, because that's one school that is on the coast that will be repeatedly affected. So from an education perspective, we are putting something in our budget for it.
Awesome, thank you for that. Anguilla's current framework allows non-Anguillians to purchase limited amounts of land through an alien's landholding license, but there are concerns about the long-term impact on Anguillan ownership and cultural heritage. Given the increasing demand for real estate, how is the government ensuring that land remains predominantly in Anguillan hands? Additionally, has the government considered expanding or promoting long-term leasing options as an alternative to outright sales, allowing investment, safeguarding Anguillan control, and future access to the land?
Well, if I jump in here, again, I think it's quite unfortunate that Minister
Mr.
Kyle
Hodge.
Hodge isn't here, as this, again, directly falls underneath his purview. But one of the things that I will say is one of the protection mechanisms is that all of the lands that go for alien landholding licenses not only have to go through approval in the ministry, but they also have to come to Executive Council for approval. A number of the pieces of land that we have seen coming forth recently for alien landholding license transactions have been lands that were already alienated for the most part. So they're already in the hands of foreigners and they're just changing. So just because we may be seeing a number of applications coming and being approved by Executive Council, that doesn't mean that it's indicative of an erosion of local lands being transferred to foreigners. A lot of the times, it's from foreigner to foreigner.
Understandable. Thank you for that. Let me get the question. To the Honorable...
Can I add to that?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So, as you're probably aware, majority of land in Anguilla is privately owned. And so there is a balancing act in terms of encouraging persons to hold on to their land and leave it for their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, versus the landowners' needs to in terms of selling land, etc. So there is a balancing act, but as the minister would have indicated, any alien landholding license application must come through Executive Council. Whether or not there is an overarching, I believe, I'm not sure whether any government in the past has determined that only up to a certain percentage of land can be sold. But it would be difficult to put that in place if you don't own the land, right?
True.
And so I can tell you that government-owned land is usually is not sold. Sometimes there may be a swap. If the government has a need for a piece of land somewhere else, they'll swap with that landowner, but the government does not sell land. The government will enter into long lease agreements or lease agreements with persons, but sale is not an option.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I really do appreciate that. To Mr. Rogers, listening to the remarks made by members of the general public, both physically and online, rather unfortunately, there's a level of disbelief and doubt that you actually have the power and will to change the healthcare system. Many have noted that you've sat in power throughout many terms throughout Anguilla's political cycle, and many feel as though enough wasn't done. So the question I have to you is, given where you sit and everything that you see, what makes your will to want to change healthcare an actual possibility this time around?
Could you repeat that question for me?
So just to summarize, the general public has a disbelief and a rather heavy notion of doubt that this time around you will actually do for healthcare, noting that you sat, I think, in a similar position between 2015 to 2020. They've also noted that you've sat in power throughout many terms throughout Anguilla's political cycle. So now the general comments are that the public does not believe that this time around there will be significant changes and a significant impact on improvements to healthcare. My question to you is, what makes it seem that this time around something can actually be done about improvements to healthcare?
Oh, okay. Well, let's go back to the question in its entirety. You said the general public. I don't know what you mean by general public. Maybe that's coming from a political aspect, but we'll address it. There's no doubt that I've been around and be part of the health system for a little while. And let me back up, because you may not know, and some of the folks who are in the general public who you're referring to may not know. I was part of the healthcare system from 1978. I don't know how old you were at the political time, at that time, I should say. And I started out as a trainee medical technologist would have worked in the health system for a number of years before I went off to train, including being one of the trainee anesthesiologists under the late Dr. Arjun Jagan that I mentioned a little earlier. So I came from way back in terms of the healthcare system. Went off to train, did several trainings, medical technology, biomedical engineering, came back, was part of the healthcare system under the health authority, and in 2005 to 2010. And there were some changes. I would admit that I would have fallen short in terms of not amending the Healthcare Authority Act to really and truly make it much more efficient and effective at that particular point in time. But to say that the health authority had its challenges, but they were far less than what the challenges are that we have today. Moving forward, as the Minister of Health over 2 terms, I would have been able to look back and to see some of the things that I should have and could have improved. Okay? It puts me in a unique position now in that I'm advising the Minister of Health with health alone. On the previous stints, and I'm not looking no excuses, on the previous stints that I would have had health, education, lands, social development, and everything else. And as you grow older, experiences will teach you that the mistakes or the missed opportunities that you would have had in the past, not to repeat them. Now, I will compare myself with my stints in as Minister of Health with the former Minister of Health who, for the first time in the history of Anguilla, a physician, a well-trained one, Yale University graduate, who was the Minister of not only finance, but health as well. And I would put my record of achievements against his record of achievements any day of the week, any minute of the day. So for those in the general public who would want to say, this time around, I don't believe me, I would have cataloged some of the things in the last 6 months, and I'll just give you a touch of them. On the 29th of September, myself, an individual from an employee from the radiology, and the acting commissioner will be going to the Dominican Republic at the request of General Electric to look at medical equipment. On October the 11th, we're heading out to Orlando to look at medical equipment, mammography, ultrasounds, the C-arm, and all of that I was talking about is not pies in the skies, okay? And the folks in the general public who may have the doubts, just tell them, hold on and wait and see. Again, when I speak about the dismantling of the health authority and bringing it back under government's control, is a classic example of the previous Minister of Health not knowing what is involved in healthcare, not knowing what is needed, and not looking into not only the service part of it, but also looking into all of the institutions that are necessary. So I will just say, experience have taught me. And for the doubters and the naysayers, stand back, and with God's help, and while we're alive, they will see, because the politics and just the facts will come out.
Thank you for that response. It's refreshing, to be honest with you, for a sitting Minister of Government to admit fault throughout their political career in recent years.
Oh, you
It's
learn by
extremely
mistakes.
refreshing. Just one last question. This is my final question. So sorry. The residents in Island Harbor have been telling me that they kind of feel as though they've been left out, in the sense of when you look at, say, communities in comparison, let's say Meats Bay, throughout the summer and many parts of the year, there are a number of events that take place on the Western Corridor, especially Meats Bay, that per se generate activity to say help businesses flourish and continue to thrive. But the people from listening to various persons from within the community, there's this sense of feeling forgotten, especially when they drive past every day seeing the basketball court still hasn't been started. And it's understandable with the challenges with the indoor basketball court. The minister mentioned it earlier this year. And then the clinic that sits there abandoned. So the question I'm really bringing to any minister really and truly is, when can the people of Island Harbour expect meaningful action or meaningful something done for them to say, not feel as though they have been left out or forgotten about?
One question I have is this a recent feeling that they've developed since the recent election, or this has been a feeling
7
before?
months. So this has been more so they've watched. I think the idea is most about, say, business activity generating through summer festival. Like for instance, Island Harbour only has Festival Del Mar, whereas I think the West has A and B class boat racing August Thursday, among other things. So I think the concerns more so lie around having to say the same opportunities for events or businesses, activity in other words, to say, for them to have their fair shine or say opportunities per se.
Okay, so a couple of things in relation. I'll answer in relation to the festivals. Traditionally, in the past, there has been boat races associated during the summer festival period with Island Harbour. The events in the western end of the island that are organized, Meats Bay and those other places, are organized on a community level, and there are a number of community organizations, for example, the West West Committee and others, that organize their own events and activities and boat racing function around them. So, in the same breath, Festival Del Mar is a festival that is exclusive just to Island Harbour. No other community or anyone can benefit from that because that is placed there, and it's a well attended festival, very popular. We intend to invest more in the festival moving forward with the festival commission generally. I think it's also important for persons to remember that district representatives have to do what they can on a community-based level to really lobby for their particular constituencies. As someone who has had a constituency that I operated in that was in opposition for quite some time, there was a lot of work that I had to do as a district representative to garner community support, to get events, activities happening in the particular constituency. I can guarantee you District 1 is not forgotten by the Anguilla United Front administration at all, but there is a responsibility on the district representative as well, current and past, because the person who's the current district representative was also the Minister of Finance for the last 5 years, as well as a district representative and Premier, and was in a unique position to be able to deliver for that constituency.
I would just like to add to that, specifically on the parts where you would have mentioned the clinic facility as well as the basketball court facility. As it relates to the clinic facility, I was hearing some representations being made apparently in the community that since I now took over and this representative for District 1 was now in opposition, that those projects would not come through despite being budgeted for. And I want to give some clarification there. So in terms of the clinic facility, which was earmarked to be turned into a community center as well as a slight heritage museum, representations were made that monies were allocated there. Now, an evaluation was done and renovations to that building would come up to about $1 million. And there was $2 million allocated for the renovation of government buildings. Bearing in mind, government's buildings are spread over 155 different sites. So that means that half of the budget for renovation of government buildings would have been fully exhausted if we were to do that. So now it comes down to a matter of priority. Now, are you following the hearing about these representations? I would have met with the Island Harbour community in person along with my permanent secretary, who was acting at the time, Mr. Travis Carter. Two of us met with the Caring Hands community group. Now, this is the group in Island Harbour that has been interested in taking over the community center and running it for the youth and people of Island Harbour. It was in that meeting that took place just a few weeks ago that it was communicated to me that they were promised this facility, and they are tired of the promises over and over, hearing it and not getting it. They were promised this facility 2 weeks after the premier, or should I say, the former premier and the current representative for District 1 took office. That's 2 weeks after he assumed office in 2020. They were made this promise. So to insinuate that because the Anguilla United Front, who just assumed office about 6 months ago, is now in office and that we're the reason why that community center is not delivered is absolutely ludicrous. Now, in terms of delivering that, while I acknowledge that we may not have had all of the funds in terms of for government renovation for that specific item, I have tasked the team at MICU with re-evaluating it, and it is one of the items that we're looking at for the capital budget. Whether it will be in the budget for 2026 or 2027, that is still yet to be determined because we have to go through the budgetary exercise. But what I will say is, upon meeting with the community group, we agreed that we would have to do a joint walkthrough between the MICU team as well as the community team to assess the readiness of the building, etc. And there were some items being stored in the building that we at MICU have not yet received confirmation that the items have been removed to be able to facilitate such a walkthrough. So from our part, that's what we are waiting on, but the ball is still continued to being moved in terms of getting that to progress. So I do hope to fulfill that promise because we do see Island Harbor as an integral and important part of our community, but we cannot take the blame for something not being delivered after it was promised years and years ago. As it relates to the basketball court facilities, I can't give a full update in the sense that Jason has really been taking the lead as it pertains to sports, these basketball facilities, etc. I know that he is currently doing some work along with Minister Cardigan Connor as it relates to really trying to make some advancements for the Blowing Point basketball facility. What I can say, given my knowledge, I do know that I've seen documentation that suggests that the Blowing Point facility was approved by the Land Development Control Committee. Till this date, I have still not seen any documentation to suggest that whether sports planning or MICU had any plans on paper for the development of the facility in Island Harbor. I spoke to someone recently who again told me they reached out to the representative for District 1 to try and see if they could get the plans for the steel frame that was sent to see if any accommodations can be made and assistance, and the person was told that those funds were supplied, the building was supplied by private funds, so in other words, there was no acknowledgement of any plans, no pointing to the plans, just what would seem to be an insinuation that because it was privately funded, we should just go ahead and let it go. I think that that would be irresponsible as us as a government, as the Ministry of Infrastructure, Ministry of Planning, we at least need to see the designs and sports needs to give it sign off. So as long as everything goes through the proper channels and is above board, we have no issue with that project commencing.
In relation to that project, the steel frame structure was put in place September of last year, and the government would have only changed at the end of February.
Carlton Pickering, KCN Television. Minister of Education, the OECS Digital Primary School Harmonized Curriculum have been launched. Can you tell us what's going on there?
Absolutely, thank you. So we're doing some piloting of the harmonized curriculum. I actually had the opportunity to speak to a couple of teachers today in Valley Primary School about the harmonized curriculum. So generally, we're going through the pilot phase of this curriculum. It's something that's new, it's different. The harmonized curriculum would have been done in consultation with a number of educators across the OECS, and Anguilla would have had members who would have had input into the system as well. The harmonized curriculum is expected to make teaching generally a bit easier. The harmonized curriculums are expected to have everything housed in one digital space. It's expected to make lesson planning quicker and easier. One of the teachers I spoke to during the lunch break said a lesson plan that she would usually take an entire weekend to do, she was able to do it in 2 hours. That is her experience, but it's quite still the early stages. And so I'll have to make my way around to speak to persons at different levels within the school systems to see how they're working. So like I said, it's something, it's new, it's different. we all know that all educators are not tech savvy. There's some persons who've been in the education profession for a number of years, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult for some older teachers to migrate to the use of the harmonized system in the digital space. But we are looking to provide continuous support and training wherever necessary to be able to do that. And so we will see how the harmonized curriculum is working. There are some adjustments to the overall curriculum and education system that I hope to make once I've done an assessment over the next year. There are a number of parents, even educators, who feel as though the curriculums at the lower level of primary school is very heavy. And there are a number of children who are matriculating to the higher grades, but they don't have the requisite literacy to be able to really be successful in the system. So there are a number of different changes that we're looking at. This is, like I said, the harmonized system. It's new, it's different. Persons are going to react to it differently, but I intend to make my way around all of the different schools and all of the different classes to talk to the teachers one-on-one to see, how the harmonized system is impacting their ability to offer teaching instruction.
How do you see it impacting our testing? The test of standards that we normally do.
Yeah.
How do you see that impacting?
Well, it is my hope that it will enhance it. But of course, because it's a harmonized system, it means that the standardized testing, you're going to need students to be progressing at a particular pace. And so one of the concerns that you may have is that you may be utilizing the harmonized system, but you're not utilizing it as quickly as, say, another educator whose students are not as moving as quickly. And so by the time you get to the standardized testing, there may be some considerations when you get to that stage. But we still have our test of standards, our local test of standards system that is expected to take some of those things into consideration. But like I say, this is the first phase of it, and we're going to be doing quite a bit of reviewing of the system, seeing how it impacts over the course of the period. But I'm hoping that it does lessen the load, particularly from the teachers. One of the things teachers complained quite a bit about was the fact that the curriculums were so heavy. They were not necessarily streamlined. They were not all in a digital space. The harmonized system does provide quite a bit of resources, as well, suggested topics, ways that you can teach, different things. So in theory, it's a good system, but we really have to be able to evaluate the practicality of the system. So it's really, really early to determine, what direction it will go.
Okay, Honorable Van der Poel, congratulations on increasing the population here in Anguilla by 1. My question to you, there's cybersecurity problem throughout the region, and every country trying to put their system in place. How safe is our system here in Anguilla?
Well, it's very difficult to define or quantify how safe a system is because it's only safe until it's become vulnerable. So you don't know what your vulnerabilities are until you fully test them out. What I can say is that the Department of IT recently did an entire upgrade across the infrastructure that's currently running. The infrastructure that was running government systems was essentially reaching its end of life, so we've essentially replaced and revitalized the backbone that's running it. So when you keep up to date with the latest technologies and predominantly the latest softwares, that's one of the biggest mechanisms that we have for continuously defending against ongoing threats that are to be developed. As we are currently in the capital phase of the budget, we are having ongoing discussions with DITES for further infrastructural upgrades that will be needed going forward. And this will also include security in terms of the software, cybersecurity, etc. This is also a time where we are in the forward planning for the government administration building. So once those buildings come on stream, which we're hoping to see construction start next year, one of the first and critical matters that we have to address is the shifting of the fiber networks from the Secretariat building where it currently sits and resides over to the new administration building. That's going to be a mammoth task. We can expect that it will cause some level of disruption to government systems. So we are doing the planning ahead of time to see how best we can minimize these disruptions. But as we are going into a new space, the discussions will also be focused on how do we future-proof this? How do we build it out to make sure that we are accommodating for future infrastructural upgrades to include the cybersecurity threats?
Okay, Regional Tourism Youth Congress is returned in the Caribbean. I think it's going to be held in Barbados from the 30th of this month to the 3rd of October. Do we have a team going from Anguilla addressing our area tourism?
Yes, we do. The Minister for Tourism is not here, but we do have a team that's going down. I think there's one youth representative that is attending.
Okay, how prepared is our team?
They should be prepared by then. The tourism planning unit at the ministry is the one that is taking the lead on the preparation for it. The Minister of Tourism is not here to speak to it specifically, but I do know that the representative is being prepared to go.
Well, I hope we prepare a team because there's a lot of things that would be happening at that Congress, and I hope that we're able to present Anguilla in a favorable light in these things. So, Comrade Premier, do we have an unemployment rate going on in Anguilla?
We have no assessment. When I say that, I think that there's a labor market survey that is supposed to be prepared. It has not been prepared as yet. We do not have, and I don't believe that we've ever had an unemployment survey that has been done to be able to assess. It's very difficult. I think when we had Hurricane Irma, we were able to come up with an assessment in terms of unemployment based on the closure of the hotels at that time. And I would imagine something similar in 2020 with COVID. But to say that we have a figure, that we have a number, that we know where we are in terms of unemployment, no, we do not have that.
Are we preparing to have things like that going?
So as I mentioned, there's a labor market survey that is to be launched, and I believe that that will be launched over the next couple of months.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that brings us to the end of this press conference. I want to thank all of you who are here for your questions, for your presence. Thank you to those who are watching and listening. Have a wonderful Monday and a very productive week.